They negotiated a deal. Donald Trump hails it as a brilliant deal. Now he's torn it up, says it was a terrible deal. So they know that they can't rely on him. But they also, given that they know that, they've spent some years diversifying trade, counting the shots in their locker, and preparing. And the tremendous gift that Donald Trump has given to Xi Jinping, whose economy wasn't doing that brilliantly, frankly, but now he can blame Donald Trump. It's an absolute political gift. So they can ride this out, I think, rather more easily than the United States can.
Now, is it just me, or do the Chinese seem a little peeved right now, a bit snippy? Or is this a wrong impression and they are actually well prepared and enjoying this game of bluff and double bluff with the American president? They have an advantage in that they are not a democracy, of course, not bounded by the slings and arrows of outrageous opinion poll ratings or from dissent within the Middle Kingdom. We perhaps ought to remember that fact as we examine what seems from a distance to be a fairly high-stakes willy-waving contest between the world's two great, if possibly diminishing, superpowers. Here to help me make sense of this view from Beijing is the brilliant Isabel Hilton, a veteran expert on China. Isabel, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Rod. How nice to be talking to you.
It's lovely to talk to you again as well. Does China feel comfortable at the moment? Is it within its comfort zone when dealing with an unpredictable actor such as Donald Trump? And does it think that it can prevail?
I think China, as China says, wouldn't have picked this fight and wouldn't have picked Donald Trump. On the other hand, given that that's where we are, they're applying themselves to securing advantage from the situation rather than disadvantage. And, you know, they have had some time to prepare. They had to deal with Donald Trump in 2016. A kind of version of what has just played out was played out then. There were, you know, he weaponized trade. They negotiated a deal. Donald Trump hails it as a brilliant deal. Now he's torn it up, says it was a terrible deal. So they know that they can't rely on him. But they also, given that they know that, they've spent some years diversifying trade, counting the shots in their locker, and preparing. And the tremendous gift that Donald Trump has given to Xi Jinping, whose economy wasn't doing that brilliantly, frankly, but now he can blame Donald Trump. It's an absolute political gift. So they can ride this out, I think, rather more easily than the United States can.
So you think in the end that quite possibly Donald Trump will have to settle for a deal with China, which is rather lower than he's trying to get at the moment, which is put a 125% tariff on the Chinese goods. And I don't know if you heard Sebastian Gorka talking about the sort of goods which China makes.
I did.
Go on, Isabel. Sorry.
I did hear Sebastian Gorka, and it reminded me of that famous remark that the neocons made at the beginning of the Iraq War, you know, talking about their contempt for what they called the reality-based community. We make our own reality, they said. And that didn't turn out too well. And I think this, you know, similar departure from reality is observable in the current administration. I'm sure the Chinese have read The Art of the Deal, and I'm sure that they know that a man who has had 6 bankruptcies in his business career, including a casino, you know, probably isn't too good at the negotiating table. So they're, you know, staying calm. They also, you know, China, the Communist Party, by the way, the 100th anniversary is 2049, not 2048, as Sebastian said. So the Communist Party has spent the last 20 years telling the American people that China was humiliated by hostile Western powers. The Communist Party has restored China to prosperity and its rightful global position, but hostile powers will always try and get you down. So you need the Communist Party to protect you. And the United States is playing absolutely into that narrative. So if there is to be a deal, if there is to be a conversation, you can be absolutely sure that Xi Jinping is not going to join that line of leaders that Trump claims is queuing up to kiss his ass. That is just not going to happen. So whenever the talks take place, there will be quiet. They will probably between people who know what they're talking about. And Xi Jinping will definitely not go to Washington unless there's an absolutely gold-plated invitation. So, he's got to show his people that he's standing up to US bullying. And it's going down very well in China. There are all these satirical videos about Donald Trump on an assembly line. It's hilarious. They're having a great time.
And they are very, very funny. This is obese American factory workers trying very hard to put a screw in a small piece of metal and so on. Very funny.
The kind of manufacturing that the Americans seem to be talking about is from the 1950s. Chinese factories are very advanced. A lot of it is done by robots, if you talk about the kind of goods that Americans buy that are made in China, it's the iPhone, made by a Taiwanese company in China, much of it automated, the rest done with highly skilled workforce and highly organized supply chains. You can't just, recreate that in Missouri. It's not, Apple says they can't do it there. So it's not just cheap Chinese goods, which people are somehow forced to buy. Curious concept. They're buying iPhones, and the Chinese are no longer buying iPhones.
We do need to remember, though, don't we, Isabel, that when we talk about China, we are talking about a totalitarian, quasi-communist dictatorship. And whatever you may think about Donald Trump, there is a qualitative difference there, isn't there? There is a actual category difference.
Well, we'll see how Donald Trump turns out. But certainly I would say that, 10 years ago, you could make a clear difference between Western liberal democracy and China. The current Trump administration is blurring those lines, and that's the danger. Western democracies are which have just also, if you look at what Trump has done to his allies, and then you look at the Spanish Prime Minister in Beijing this week, saying to China, we need a warmer relationship. You think he's driving his former allies into the arms of the Chinese. This is not good.
And driving the Chinese closer to the Russians, I suppose, as well.
Yes, well, that limitless friendship is not likely to be broken because they both see, whether you believe it or not, they share a vision. Xi Jinping and Putin share a vision of the decline of Western democracy, and they see it as their moment, the moment to reshape the world with rules that suit them and don't suit us. So it is a very dangerous moment, and it's such a dangerous game that Washington is playing. Why would you alienate the countries of ASEAN, the most highly trade-dependent group in the world, all China's neighbors, and all of them have been accustomed to hedging their geographical proximity to China that they can't change with good relations with the United States. And suddenly they get hit with massive tariffs. Vietnam, which is coming along as a kind of promising industrial power, wants to be an ally of the United States, gets flattened by tariffs. It makes no sense to me.
Isabel Hilton, thanks so much. Lovely to talk to you again.